Today, we're going to be focusing on company culture. Company culture is really one of my favorite topics. It's the main reason that I got into leadership coaching. When I was coaching basketball at Bard College, the thing that stood out to me the most was our culture. At times early on, especially, our culture was struggling. And then as we started to be more intentional to put more time, more focus into our culture, it started to grow. And seeing the results that the culture had in terms of both our performance and how well we did, wins and losses, but more importantly, the development of the people on the team. When we were in a culture that was positive, that was supportive, that was hardworking, that was unselfish, that wanted to grow and get better, then the people within that really flourished. They were able to be more authentic themselves, and they were just able to be comfortable, to take chances and to grow. So I really started to think about, okay, I really want to focus on, we have one person join us right here. Welcome. I really wanted to focus on how do we develop cultures? What are the key attributes of building successful cultures in sports, in business, in community, in all different areas of your life? Transitioning from the sports world into coaching in the business world, I've got a chance to work with different companies and either different business leaders individually and talk to them about it, and also work with business teams as a whole and help them develop their own culture. With that, I'm going to go ahead and share, and we'll jump right in. I know we have a smaller group. It is going to be interactive today, so I'll ask you some questions, and then it also will be shared with the people that couldn't make it for the recording as well.
Hey, Matt, I have a 1 o'clock meeting I have to jump off and back on for. So for some reason, my calendar, actually it's a 1:15 meeting, so.
Oh, okay. Are you on Eastern time?
Yes.
Okay. If you have to jump off and then jump back on, that's fine. And you'll get the recording as well. So join for as much as you can of it.
Okay.
Yeah. Excellent. A little bit about me. I know, Usman, you know a little bit about me, and some of the people that signed up do, some don't. As I mentioned, my experience comes from the teaching world and also from coaching basketball. So I taught in the US. I also taught overseas in Paraguay and in China. And then I coached high school and college basketball. Coached 6 years at the high school level and 6 years at the college level. As I mentioned, culture is such a big piece of teams. And this is really, from coaching basketball, is where my love of culture started to come into. And that's really what led me into leadership coaching. And then I got into executive and leadership coaching, and I founded Culture Through Leadership. And you can tell by the name of the company how important culture is to me and how important I believe it is to being successful as a leader and as an organization. What is company culture? This is the environment that's created by the attitudes, behaviors, and relationships of the people within an organization. So it's really the feel. It's how people that go into work each day, how they feel about going into work, the overall mood and the environment of the company. And the thing with culture is that it is very dynamic. Just because you have a successful culture at one point doesn't mean it will stay successful if you don't keep surrounding yourself with the right people and keep working on it. Just because you might have a struggling culture, maybe even a toxic culture, doesn't mean it has to stay that way either. By doing the strategies we'll talk about today, will really help you grow it. But really think about those three things: the attitudes of the people within it, the behaviors, which are really their actions, and then the relationships of the different people, how they interact with each other, how well they get along, how well they work together. Benefits of culture. There are so many benefits, way more than are on this list. Increases profitability. I think for businesses, I start with this because it does come down to, with a lot of people, the bottom line. Does culture actually matter? Does it actually make a difference in terms of performance and profitability? And the answer to that is yes. There was a study by Harvard that looked at successful cultures over an 11-year period. And over an 11-year period, highly successful cultures were 756% more profitable. 756% over an 11-year period, which is a huge number. And I was following them over that time. But it's been shown in varying studies as well in terms of how it improves both performance and profitability. Improves employee well-being. This to me is the number one thing. Yes, I understand businesses. I want businesses to be successful. But for me, I'm about people. I'm about helping others. I'm about trying to help people improve the quality of their life. That's the reason why I do coaching. That's the reason why I'm into this. And that's why culture is so important to me as well, because it does improve well-being. I've had a number of friends and colleagues who have been in toxic cultures and who have had very real mental health issues from being in those. Anxiety, depression, PTSD, from being in a culture that was toxic, where they were being attacked. I've also experienced and been in other cultures where it was thriving, where people were able to be their authentic selves. And in those cultures, people's well-being, it was the opposite end. They were grateful, they were joyful, they were experiencing all different positive emotions, excited to come to work. Increases innovation. When people know that they can take chances, they're comfortable, that will increase. Higher levels of engagement and also motivation. And then higher rates of employee retention. When you look at reasons why people leave companies, one of the top reasons why people leave companies is because of a negative or a toxic culture. So by having a strong culture, you'll increase profitability. You'll also keep the people that you have at your company and have them want to stay. Building your culture. It starts with your leadership. I often say your culture is either going to rise or it's going to sink to the level of your leadership. If you have strong leadership within your organization, the culture will be in good shape, especially if these leaders value culture. You can have a very good culture, but if you have weak current leadership, chances are that culture is going to drop. So with building culture, also think about leadership development, getting the right leaders in place, and then making sure that you are training and developing them. Develop a plan. Successful cultures don't happen by accident. They happen by intentional work, and they happen by having a plan and then executing that plan. I think most companies nowadays don't necessarily have a plan for how they want to develop their culture, which I think is a gap. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for those that really value it to develop this plan and then to put it into practice. Consistently work at it. As I mentioned before, it's dynamic. Culture is developed by the small interactions on a day-to-day basis. The conversations, keeping your word, doing the little things consistently over time is how you develop the culture. And then focusing on 4 key areas. These 4 key areas is what this presentation is going to be about. I'm going to go through each of these, what it's like, and then how to develop it. I know we just have a couple people. I think I saw Lanka just join in as well. I'm just going to ask this question. We'd love to get a couple of your feedback that are on here. Others that are watching later, you can think about this as well. Scenario number 1, you are hired for a leadership role within a company. During the interview process, you were told there were challenges within the company. It turns out it is more toxic than you realize. There's internal fighting, people not talking to each other, which is common, constant gossip and complaining, and people looking for new jobs. You and the other leaders within the company are tasked with fixing the culture. What do you think the best course of action to fix this is? And we'll go over more of the details with this during the presentation, but I'd love to get your initial thoughts. What would be your course of action if you were in this situation?
So I'm actually in that situation. And I knew right away that I had to model what I expected in terms of those internal fighting and things like that. And I also knew that there were people that maybe it wasn't the best environment for them, and it was okay to let people leave. Um, and ensured that I created a safe space so that people felt seen, safe, and heard, knew what the expectations were, and little by little have created a better culture and a place that people want to come work.
Thank you for sharing that, Heidi. I think you are spot on there in terms of modeling it, making sure you have the right people in place. If you don't, then yes, people do. You will need to let people go in order for the culture and the people that you have within it to be
Actually,
successful.
it's surprising to me. Most of the time, I don't have to let them go. They let them show themselves to the door, because they realize that this maybe is we're not that maybe the toxic fighting is stuff that they enjoy. And when as soon as it's kind of realized that, oh, this place isn't going to do that kind of stuff, either they cut you find out who cuts it out, or people find their way out the door.
Interesting. I have seen that as well. Very good. And then the last thing that you mentioned was ensuring a safe space, and we're going to talk more about this as well. Great ideas. Way to start it off. And I see one in the chat that I'm going to read now. Blanca said, I would have a discussion with small groups of people to get the scoop, look at the data and create a plan. So getting the people together, having a discussion, get the scoop. And I think one thing I'll add with get the scoop is think about the cause and think about the root cause of it when you're talking about getting the scoop. What's the actual root cause of why this is happening, and getting different people's input, as you said, to be able to figure that out. And then also, as you said, look at the data, back it up, make sure it's not just opinion, you have that as well, and then create a plan. Absolutely.
So my take on this is that sometimes you feel some organizations have toxic culture. So I believe that the people at the leadership roles are contributing towards that toxic culture, or the leaders in those positions even don't realize that they are contributing to that toxic culture, that leads to demotivation and low profitability. So in these situations where the leaders are involved in promoting the toxic culture, and they are not realizing or they are not in the mood of fixing that, how you then what needs to be done, and how that company can thrive or promote a culture that is not toxic.
Yeah, as I said, it does start with the leadership. So if the leadership is part of the problem, then the only way to fix it, in my opinion, is for those leaders to have self-awareness that they are part of the issue and want to change the culture. I think if those leaders stay in place and they don't realize that, then it's going to be really hard to fix the culture. I think individuals within the company can do what they can in terms of setting the example and do their best, and that will help it to some regard, but it really needs to start with those people at the top in terms of having self-awareness and then wanting to fix it. If they don't, then there's only so much that culture can grow. So then potentially, if you're in that space, you can do your best within that space. You can make sure personal responsibility, you can build relationships, but you also need to understand that it is going to be limited by the people up top. So you have to decide, potentially, I like it here, I'm going to stay, or potentially I think somewhere else might be better, where there is more of a thriving culture.
Okay, that's wonderful. So have you any recent experience that you work with some people who are at the leadership roles? Maybe there are 5 people in the leaderships, two are promoting toxicity in the company, and 3 are thriving to build a better company's culture. So if there is some fighting at the top level, so how you can really deal with that, and have you recent experience with it? I appreciate if you can share those so I can get some ideas from that.
Yeah, I do. And when one of the companies, which I won't mention the name obviously, but had a leadership team where it was varying degrees in terms of how much they were contributing to the culture. And I don't think I think certain people on that team were more committed to fixing the culture. I think others were a bit more resistant. And I think the ones that were a bit more resistant, we had to work with them in terms of one-on-one coaching. I think the one-on-one coaching with them did help. I think that's really one of the best ways to do it, is to have conversations, to get their perspective, to talk with them and show them the importance of it, show them how their example, what they're doing, impacts others and impacts the culture, and making that very clear to them. But I think trying to, and what this is what coaching does, is also listen to understand their perspective. And then once you hear their perspective, then you're able to more work with them. I do agree with what was said before in terms of there could be a situation where even within that leadership team, you need to let certain leaders go if they are holding the whole group back. And maybe, as she mentioned before, maybe they just choose that on their own, realizing the company's changing. Or there could be a situation as well where if the company is in a position where they can make a change within that leadership position, then they might need to do that, especially if they've tried to work with that person and tried to have them grow.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Thanks, Usman, for those questions. I think you sparked it off. Okay, Heidi, yep, I see that. And hopefully you'll be back and look forward to seeing them. Okay, as Heidi mentioned, safety is the foundation of any culture. I put it first, this is the first of the 4 areas that I mentioned before in terms of the 4 crucial areas for company culture. Number 1 is safety. This means people feel safe at the company, both physically and emotionally and psychologically. Safety-wise, most businesses won't have that much of an issue with that. If you're in, for instance, a construction business or something where there is some physical danger, that needs to be focused on. If you're more working in an office, working from home, that won't be the issue. The issue for those companies will be the emotional and the psychological. With this psychological safety, this is a term within the leadership space that's become a lot more popular within the last couple of years, and for a very good reason. And I hope it's an idea that will stay very relevant and not something that will kind of just fade, because I think it is so crucial and so important for success of the companies. Psychological safety is a belief that one will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes, and the team is safe for interpersonal risk-taking. And that's by Amy Edmondson, who I believe she works at Harvard. This is really saying, do people feel safe enough to speak up? Do they feel safe enough in a meeting to raise their hand and to ask a question, to disagree with someone, to throw out an idea that might be different? This is really big. I've been in, and Usman, you were asking about specific examples. I've been on the last leadership team that I worked on. Even people within that leadership team, managers within the company that were kind of in that second position, had a lack of psychological safety, where they didn't feel safe enough in leadership meetings to share a new idea, which might be surprising to some people. You might think if you're in a leadership position, then you're going to have the confidence to be able to share that. That's not the case in reality, whether that's a manager or whether that's a regular employee. So creating this psychological safety is key. It's key for productivity. It's key for innovation. It's key for well-being. So how do you create this psychological safety? A number of different areas. I'll mention a couple now, and then a few of these will go into more detail as we go. The first 2, practice active listening, or practice empathy and use active listening. I'm going to go into more about these 2 a little bit later, but these 2 are really foundational for having that psychological safety. Making sure the leader is demonstrating these, but it's also all the people within the company are really practicing these. And you can teach these. I was having a coaching conversation with someone last week, and he was saying one of the people on his sales team doesn't practice active listening. And he was kind of wondering if it's okay to talk to him about this. I said, absolutely. It's critical for that person's work success, and have that conversation. Active listening is about listening to understand rather than respond. So really allowing yourself to listen in terms of their thoughts, their vocal quality, such as their tone, and their body language to get that full message. Show appreciation. Another critical one to developing this. Recognize people when they've done something well, and have this be a big part of the culture. The next one is really specific to psychological safety, and that's actively invite input and recognize it. Both in the meetings, actively invite it. Who has an idea? Open it up, consistently open it up. And then also through one-on-one conversations. You have a conversation with someone, hey, I really love to get your input during these meetings, and, feel free to share. I really value your ideas. Putting that thought in their head will help them have the confidence when that meeting does come to be able to share. And then recognize it. If someone speaks up during a meeting, don't just ignore it and go to the next thing, but listen to it. Acknowledge them for sharing, especially if they were taking a risk. If they were taking a risk and sharing something that was more challenging, really recognize them for that. Be vulnerable yourself. If people see the leader is vulnerable, they're able to admit when they don't know something. They're able to admit when they made a mistake. They're able to share when they feel uncomfortable or when they're struggling with something. Then it opens the door, and it opens the door for others to be able to share the same thing. And they say, okay, if he or she is doing it, then I know that I can also be able to share and be vulnerable myself. And that will help to create the psychological safety. Create an inclusive environment. This really just means to be respectful. Be respectful of individual differences, whether that's a cultural difference, whether that's a race, ethnicity difference, a religious difference, whatever it might be inclusive, respectful. And part of that is also understanding the differences. How do you understand different cultural differences? You ask questions. That could even be a little bit vulnerable. Hey, I noticed that such and such, and I wanted to get your thoughts on it, and allow yourself to ask about their culture or ask about their backgrounds. The last one is really big. The last one is as important as anything that's on the list, and that's to avoid negative behavior. This negative behavior, such as yelling at employees, such as putting down or demeaning employees, such as blaming others, gossiping, all these type of behaviors where you are really putting someone down. By avoiding those, that's really what's going to be so critical in creating it. And also, you can do all the things that are above that, but if you have negative behaviors, it's really going to break that trust, and it's going to destroy a lot of the work that you did above it. Trust and psychological safety is something that it takes time to build, but it can be quickly broken by negative behavior, by really putting someone down in a meeting and using that person's name, speaking negatively about them at a meeting can really crush that person's confidence and can destroy the psychological safety. So as the leader, you need to make sure you're avoiding it, but also you have to be aware of the others and make sure other people are also not doing it as well. Nobody's perfect. There might be examples where it does happen, and those, make sure you take ownership of that, and then you're able to move forward from it. You're able to correct what happened and move forward with it. The second one, so the first one is safety and safe environment. The second one is purpose-driven. Safety is the foundation. Purpose-driven, I like to think as the direction. It's making sure everybody is headed on the same direction and they know why they're headed in that direction. This is really about being clear on why your organization exists and what it stands for. It's the core of it. With this, you want to communicate it consistently. And I'll talk about this more, but I think consistency of message is an extremely powerful tool and strategy for a leader. I'll say it one more time. Consistency of message is an extremely powerful strategy and tool for a leader. That means that you're not just always saying different things and emphasizing this one week, this another week, this another week, but it's understanding what's important to you and to the company, and that you're consistently communicating this. Yes, you can talk about other things, but you're consistently talking about this one-on-one conversations, meetings, in your emails. The next one's a really big one, and that's connect individuals to the purpose. Whatever the purpose is of the organization, you have to see how does each individual person connect to that greater purpose. And you need to let them know and communicate that to them. How does that person's individual contribute to the success of the company and to the purpose of the company? And let them know that. With this, think about purpose, vision, values, and standards. 4 things. Purpose is, that's why your organization exists. Vision is where you're headed or what you want to achieve. Vision, I like to think more of as long-term goals. It's important for companies to have goals, both shorter term and longer term. The longer term goals to me are really the vision. Values are who you are. That's what you stand for. This is who you are as a company in terms of the values, your beliefs, what's most important. And then standards are more the expectations or the day-to-day behaviors of the people within it. This is more the specific and really the day-to-day in terms of how people are showing up and doing their job. Your standards really should tie into the first 3, especially your purpose and your values. Couple ones for purpose. Another word for purpose is mission statements. To me, mission statements are really only valuable if the people know them and they're impactful. I think most companies have mission statements that are very wordy. They're very long. People don't know them. Even if they do know them, it really doesn't impact them much. I think a few good examples are the 3 that I listed here in terms of Nike, Apple, and Disney. And I'll let you read these 3 on your own. I think there's really about one thing in each one that stands out for me. Inspiration and innovation, I think those are kind of the 2 big ones for the Nike one. The user experience stands out for me in the Apple one, making it the best user experience possible. And then the Disney one is to do those 3 things, but through unparalleled storytelling and how they're using storytelling within all the different aspects of their company. One way to do this, and especially for those expectations, and the expectations are the standards, those are tied to your values, are to use catchphrases. And these are from the Culture Code, which is by Daniel Coyle, which is one of the books back there. And if you're looking to learn more about company culture, I think the Culture Code is kind of I'd say like the Bible of company culture. It's really the go-to book for it, at least in my opinion. Couple of these, and I'll let you read these different ones on your own, but these are just easy things for people to remember that are important to the company. So finding the yes, if yours is in customer service, you want to think about how can we find the yes with when people are asking questions or have a concern. One size fits one, which really is about making it individual to every person, but it's an easy way for them to remember that. just want you to think about this, and we're not going to share this one, but I just want you to think about this. What are the core values of your company? And then how do you communicate these? And I'll share a couple ideas for that second question in a few. I'm going to give you a little bit of a chance to think about it first, though. Couple ideas just to spark your thinking for that second one. How do you communicate these? Being consistent, that consistency of message that I mentioned, but doing it in meetings. Hey, we're going to start off this meeting. Gratitude's one of our core values by sharing what we're grateful for, and just each person sharing one thing that they're grateful for. Communication is one of the core values. Start the meeting by talking about the importance of active listening and giving your full attention to what we're doing and to eliminate any distractions. But talk about this in meetings and bring it up at different points. One-on-one conversations. There's a couple of leaders that I know in particular that they have a couple of core values and they find a way just to intertwine it into their conversations. Attitude is one of the core values of them, and they talk about the importance of, that really comes down to the mindset piece and having the right attitude and having the positive outlook for it going forward. But just through the one-on-one conversation, they're able to integrate it into it. Visuals are very good as well. Having it up on the wall, different things within, especially if you're in an office space, putting it in emails, maybe it's in the signature of your email or something that you just write in your emails and including it in there. But look for opportunities. I think that's one of the big ones. Look for opportunities for how you're able to intertwine it. The values are only important if they are used. Another one for values as well is decision-making. I think values, when done correctly, are a great way for decision-making, which I know that's a little bit different than communication, but certainly you can, if you're making a decision, you can communicate that as well. Relationship-centered. Mentioned before when we were sharing about setting the example. As the leader, relationships and your people are the heart of your company. That's really what's going to make your company go. And as the leader, you need to be relationship-centered and really value these relationships. As the leader, get to know each person. Develop a unique relationship with each person. The bigger the company, the more people you have underneath you, the harder that can become. But you can always develop relationships, especially with the core people that you're working closely with. Think about the quantity and the quality of the time you're spending with people. Quantity, make sure you're spending enough time with people. If you have someone that you work with at work, an important part of your job, and you're only, say, meeting with that person for a few minutes every other week, that might not be enough time to develop a strong relationship. Probably not. And then the second is the quality. And to me, quality is the most important out of those two. You can spend a lot of time with someone. You can spend an hour with that person every single day. But if there's not quality to those interactions, a strong relationship is not going to form. So think about how can you raise that quality? And I'm going to share with you one thing on the next slide in terms of doing that. Properly manage interpersonal conflict. I think this is a really big one for company culture. One of the reasons why company cultures struggle, and a big reason why, is because of interpersonal conflict and when it's not managed properly. You are going to have interpersonal conflict at every company organization in the world. It's going to happen. Whenever you have different personalities, high stress environment, there's going to be some conflict. The best companies in the world have conflict. The difference is how it is handled. If it is done early on, if it's done through active listening, through understanding the other person, and through having these one-on-one conversations where there's a level of respect and an outcome in mind with them as well. but really thinking about empathy and active listening being the two keys for having those one-on-one conversations to help with that interpersonal conflict. Strategies to build relationships. First one is be curious. Be curious by asking questions. Get to know them as a person outside of just work. What are their interests, their passions, their background and their experiences, their goals? Finding out about the person beyond work is really crucial for it. As you are asking these questions, practice active listening. Active listening is really how you improve the quality of it, as I mentioned on the previous slide, by listening to understand rather than respond. So often when we are in conversations with someone else, we're thinking about, as the other person is saying, how am I going to respond to this? When you do that, it takes the attention off the other person and it puts it on yourself. In active listening, it's noticing when your mind has gone to, how am I going to respond? And then it's bringing the attention back to the other person. Show people that you care. Asking questions in terms of how they are doing and having a genuine interest. If they shared something with you, they shared that their spouse was sick, following up with them, how is he or she doing? Checking in with them a few days later. Same thing with their kids. Their kids had, let's say, a sports game or a play, asking them how it went. Schedule check-in conversations. And these are really great ones to improve the quantity number, making sure you're spending enough time with people. You and your colleague can decide how often you're going to meet. Say it's one of your direct reports. You may choose to meet with that person every other week for 30 minutes. If it's a new colleague, for instance, I was just talking with someone new colleague, they're having to do a lot of training with that person. The leader is meeting with them an hour once every week. But that's more early on, and that over time, that will probably become a little bit less as it goes. In these check-in conversations, see how the other person is doing first. Don't just go straight into work, but check in, see how they're doing, see how the relationship is doing. Then go in and talk about the work and what needs to be done. Be positive and show appreciation. People want to be around others that are positive. They don't want to be around people that are complaining all the time. Unless that person is complaining all the time, then they tend to want to be around those people. But that's really not the people that you want within your culture and your team. Follow through on what you said you were going to do. If you said you were going to email someone, make sure you do that. You said you're going to do a specific part of the project, make sure you're doing that. By keeping your word, you're building that trust and you're developing that relationship. The fourth one is to value attitude and communication. As I mentioned, one of the key things with company culture is attitude. Company culture is the attitudes, the behaviors, and the relationships of the people. So thinking about the attitudes of the people, are they positive? Are they grateful? Are they growth-minded? Are they confident? What is their attitude in their day-to-day mindset about their job, about themselves, about their colleagues? A big piece with this is having the right people in place. Thinking about who you're hiring, the people you're hiring, do they fit in with your culture? That's a critical question to think about during the hiring process. Yes, can they do the job? Are they skilled? Will they be successful in it? But also, do they fit in with their attitude and with the culture that we have? If that person is not fitting in with the culture, say even someone that has been at the company for a while, then it's about having a conversation with that person, helping them grow, helping them make those changes. If they are not able to do that, sometimes, as mentioned before, sometimes they'll leave on their own when they see that they're not aligned with the culture. Other times, though, you might have a decision to make as a leader where maybe this is not the right fit for that person. Next one, emphasize it and demonstrate it as a leader. We've already talked about this a couple times. If you're going to be valuing attitude and valuing communication, You need to be talking about it, and you also need to be acting on it. There needs to be alignment with those two things, your words and your actions. The last two are simple, but they are powerful. And just because something is simple doesn't mean it's easy. Making sure, yes, you might know this, but how well are you acting upon it? First one, appreciate it when it's shown. If someone has a growth mindset and is really just looking to constantly grow, ask questions, learn new things, recognize them for that. If someone's really resilient and they were able to overcome a challenge, recognize them for that. If someone is an excellent listener, or if someone's able to build really strong relationships with others, appreciate them and recognize them for that. And then the last one is to have accountability when there's gaps, when it's not being shown. If someone does not have the right attitude, is not communicating in a way that is productive and efficient, then there needs to be a conversation and there needs to be clear expectations going forward. There needs to be a two-way conversation where it's not you just telling the person, but you asking questions. But then there also needs to be clear changes going forward, and you need to see that these are being done and to follow through with it. If that accountability piece is not there, that can really hurt the culture. Couple things that can hurt the culture: those negative behaviors, conflict management, and a lack of accountability. Those are three really big ones. I'll say that again. Negative behavior can hurt the culture. Interpersonal conflict that's not resolved in the right way, and a lack of accountability. All three of those can really hurt the culture if any of those three are missing. This is a quote that I've thought of and I share with others is, energy is contagious, especially when it comes from the leader. There's always an energetic exchange that's happening, and this energy is contagious. If someone's really positive and upbeat, it's going to influence others. This is even more true, though, when it comes from people in those leadership positions. This is a question for you to reflect on. Are you contributing to or taking away from the culture at your organization? I think with culture, there needs to be a personal responsibility, a personal accountability from each person. So thinking about self-reflection. Are you adding to it or are you taking away from it? You could be adding to it in certain ways and taking away from it in certain ways, but really allowing yourself to be honest with yourself and then to take the steps to make sure that you are contributing to that positive culture that you want to see. Just to review the 4 key areas: creating a safe environment, being purpose-driven, being relationship-centered, and then valuing attitude and communication. By doing those 4 things and really putting your focus on those 4 things, that will help to create a thriving culture. Implementation. If you have been in any of my webinars in the past, workshops in the past, you know that I'm big on not just listening, but making sure that you walk away with this with action steps going forward. I think that's crucial for any talk that you're in. How are you going to start to implement what you just heard? And implement it as soon as possible. Implement it right away. First question is, what is one strategy that we covered today that you will implement to improve your culture? So out of those 4 on here, which of these 4 are you going to focus on? And then how will you do this? What is the action step that you will take with it? If it is to create safety, maybe it's one of those bullet points that I mentioned, practicing active listening, for instance, or encouraging others to speak up and to recognize them for it. But thinking about what is that specific action step? And then the third one is, how will you measure it to see if you've achieved it? Certain things are a little bit easier to measure than others, especially with culture. Others, you need to get a bit more creative. Maybe it's getting feedback from others. Maybe it's using your own rating scale. But thinking about how, whatever that action step, how can you see if you are making these changes? And I'm going to give you a minute to 2 minutes to think about these 3 questions on your own. I'll give you 2 minutes. About 30 more seconds just to finish making some notes and thinking about, get specific with that action step. What is something that you can actionably do? As I mentioned with that, start soon, start it today, start it tomorrow morning, but don't wait until later this month to next month to start it. The sooner you start it, the more momentum you build, the easier it is to put it into practice and to make it sustainable. If anybody is interested in coaching, I do 2 types of coaching. I do internal coaching, which is working with organizations. Oftentimes it's working with a leadership team or working with a leader and their individual team. This is a combination of one-on-one coaching, group coaching, some training with that as well. And really the 2 focuses of that are leadership development and also improving company culture. There is a team building aspect to it as well. I'd say that's really the third one with that as well. The second one is individuals. I work with people one-on-one and for either 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months. The most common one, and the one I definitely recommend is the 6 months. I think if you're going to make a change, that's a good number to do it. And it really allows you to give yourself that time to be able to do it. But we'll meet a couple times each month. There'll be one-on-one coaching calls. And then in between each coaching call, we'll have things that you really set and agree upon to do. To me, and the research backs it up, coaching is one of, if not the best way to improve and to become a more dynamic and more successful leader. If you are interested in either one of these 2, make sure to reach out. I am offering a discount right now for the month of May, 25% off for any of the individual coaching programs. So this is really good time to do it. Contact information. First one is my website. Second is my email. Third is my LinkedIn. If you're interested in the coaching, make sure definitely do reach out. Probably send me an email would be the easiest way. You can also go to my website and go to book a call. Either one of those 2 work if you're interested in doing the coaching. And any questions from today? I know we have a little bit of a short, smaller group, but anybody in terms of that are with us, Wonka, or I think right now it's just you. Wonka, any questions in terms of from the call today?
Yeah, well, I think it's really great. It is really great that you have these, snippets of leadership things, because culture is a big thing and people just don't walk the talk. And that is the biggest problem. Like they know what to do, but they don't actually do it, right?
Exactly. I call that the achievement gap. The achievement gaps is what we know we need to be doing or should be doing and what we're actually doing. And that gap right there. And how can we close that gap? I think thinking about in terms of how can you close that?
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining and participating.
Yeah. All
And
right.
if you have any questions later on, or anybody in terms of, because there's people that will watch the recording. If you have questions, you can reach out to me. Otherwise, have a great day and I'll see you at the next one.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.